Thanks very much for me. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I don't want to see wherever you're joining from. I want to believe that we are all joining from Lagos. I'm sure that's not true. So can you drop your locations in chat? So that's one of the things with data, isn't it? You will most likely be wrong if you try to use your intuition. Not like most likely, but you are likely to be wrong if you use your intuition without actually collecting and analyzing data, okay? So as a matter of fact, the first two locations are Kwara and Sokoto. So you can see, right? So, but me sitting here in Lagos and thinking the head office of DSN is also in Lagos, you know, then maybe everybody's in Lagos. Now imagine the next three locations are Calabar. Okay, the next location, the next one is Ogun. So we haven't even seen anyone from Lagos yet. So you see how, okay, first person from Lagos, Tolu Bakare. So Tolu, first in Lagos, welcome. So welcome to our day 3 class. Obviously, we have a lot to cover. We have a whole lot to cover as far as Power BI is concerned. Okay, so I hope we have some people that have joined from the previous classes as well. One of the most important ways to learn is to make sure that you have continuity, isn't it? So don't have breaks. You shouldn't have breaks. Make sure what you have started, you are able to continue the journey. So in our last class, I mentioned I was going to be dropping some recordings. I'm currently working on some of those recordings. So please expect to have them in the coming week. So make sure that you are checking the Google Classroom, location. I'm sure DSN will notify you once I have those videos dropping. So I will be recording, first of all, a lot of videos on Power Query, because there is no way you want to do data visualization with Power BI that you won't have to use Power Query, and you need to be very, very efficient. So you need to spend a lot of time learning how to use Power Query efficiently. So I'll be recording those videos, not like I'll be recording, more like I will be completing those videos because I have them in the pipeline already. So today, let me share my screen first. So the idea for today is for us to jump straight into visualization in Power BI so that we can create our charts. Okay? So I just shared my screen now. I hope you can all see my full screen. So if you can see my full screen, can you type full screen? Type full screen if you can see my screen right now. Just type full screen so I will be sure that you have what I have. Okay, great. Excellent. So everyone can see my full screen. So today we are going to jump into data visualizations in Power BI. We've covered, some excellent foundations on Power Query. And before we wrap this up, it makes sense that we should do visualization because the entire output of a Power BI product at the end of the day is always visualization. It's just that before you get to the visualization, there is always a lot of things involved, which is what we try to take care of first. Okay. Now, as far as visualization is concerned, it can be the easiest part of Power BI, and it can also be the most difficult part of Power BI. So you need to make a decision. Do you want it to be the easiest part, or do you want to take it as it is? So if you take it as it is, basically, then it can be the most difficult aspect of the job, right? But you may not know that it's difficult until you start to produce a couple of dashboards and people give you some very, very negative feedbacks. Meanwhile, you probably were not aware that the job that you have done is not good enough, okay? So it's very important that you learn the real concepts of data visualization. You learn how to effectively visualize data without using the wrong charts and without also confusing people. Okay, so if you follow me on Twitter, for example, you will notice that I posted one very beautiful chart on Twitter this week. Most people did not understand that that was meant to be a joke, but the people that know me very well obviously know that was a joke. It was a classic joke, basically. It's not one of the common jokes that you see around. So if I go to my Power BI, the first thing I want to describe is what the Power BI interface looks like for you to start visualizing data. So on Power BI, you get to see that you have this white area. Okay, so you see you have a very white section somewhere in the middle, which is basically your workspace. We call this place the canvas, because you as a data analyst trying to visualize data, basically you are an artist. We can refer to you as an artist because you are going to be creating what? You'll be creating graphics, diagrams, but these diagrams now are graphs. All right, so you have your white space to work with. Then on the right hand side, you should see that you have a couple of collapsible panels or panes. You see the filters pane, you can expand and collapse. You see the visualization pane, you can expand and collapse. And then you have the fields pane as well, you can also expand and collapse. So what these things are meant for are like your experience, your past experience in school, where you make use of graph books, isn't it? If you want to draw graphs in mathematics back then, you have a book called Graph Book. But then the book is not all you need to draw your graphs. You also have something called math sets, mathematical sets. Okay. So in this case, in this Power BI case now, the white canvas right here is your graph book, while all the panels you have here are your mathematical sets. Okay. Now, you know, in your math sets now, you have different things in your math sets for different things. For example, you have a pencil there for drawing. You have an eraser there for cleaning. You have ruler for making sure you have straight lines. You also have a compass for making sure that you can, is it the compass now or the protractor, so that you can draw a perfect circle and things like that. Okay, so the same thing applies in Power BI. So for these panels, right here on the right hand side, they are all meant for, you know, different things. Okay, so the fields panel will show you the fields that you have in your data. So fields are the same as columns. So the column headers that you have in your data, you have them listed on the fields panel. Once you bring in data now, you are going to see it. The visualization panel is where you get to choose what chart type are you going to use for, you know, representing the visual you are trying to create. So you see different icons representing different chart types. It is still the same visualizations pane that you get to design your chart. Because when you draw a chart is going to come up with some default settings. So default settings can be color can be blue, for example. Font size can be maybe number 10. And then you can also have something like maybe font type might be like Sego, for example. So it will always come with default fonts. Then you can design what your chart looks like by coming to the visualizations panel. So everything about the chart itself will come from visualizations panel. Everything about the data that you want to use on the charts will come from the fields panel. Okay, data come from fields panel. The main chart type comes from visualizations panel and everything surrounding that. Then you have your filters panel as well. So your filters panel is where you want to filter your charts. So in case you don't know it, you can actually filter charts. It's not only data that you can filter. So if you have a chart, for example, that shows 20 things, you can say, okay, I don't want to show 20 things, I want to only show 5. So it is on the filters panel that you get to remove the remaining 15. We are going to see all those once we bring in our data and we start to do visualization. Now, before we bring in data and before we do visualization, I want to let you understand something about charts and something about visualization. So everything that you, that's why it is always called plots, for example. So you want to plot a graph. The reason why you are plotting is because you are supposed to kind of like show relationship between some variables and some numbers. What do I mean by that? If you want to draw a bar chart, you will start like this, isn't it? Maybe not like that. So let's clean this. So you want to draw a bar chart, you probably start, 1 second. So you probably start like this for a bar chart. Then you have your bars inside, isn't it? You have your bars like that. If you want to draw a column chart, you start this way. Then you have your columns like that. If you want to draw a line chart, you start this way. Then you have your lines like that. If you want to draw a scatter chart, you start this way. Then you have your scatters like that. So you can see that for most of the charts that we are drawing now, something is common with all of them. Can you tell me what is common? Just quickly send to chat. What do you think is common from all of these charts that I've just drawn on my screen now? What's common? Something is always common. Thank you very much. So you see that axis is common. So the axis is just the different dimensions that you have. Basically, you see that we have two axes for everything, right? This could be maybe axis 1 and axis 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and so on and so forth. So each of the axes is, we always try to represent the relationship between a variable and a number. Now, scratch variable and scratch number and use this instead. Each of the axes will try to show the relationship between a number and a category. A number and a category. That's what the axis is meant to do. All right, and that's what we call it. We are plotting a graph so that at the end of the day, let's use the column chart as an example. So at the end of the day, when you have your column chart like this, you have one axis here, you have another axis here. So each of these two axes will have to represent either a category or a number. So that at the end of the day, we do a plotting of the relationship between that category and that number. Now, these two axes, we always refer to them as the x-axis and the y-axis. Let's just use that as the name now for the two axes, x and y-axis. So for a column chart, for example, the x-axis will try to describe the categories, while the y-axis will try to describe the values. So at the end of the day, whatever chart you plot now is going to plot the category to the number. That's why we are plotting a chart. So for example, let's say that we're trying to compare, who is the goat, for example. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to close my eyes when I'm about to draw it so that we don't have bias. So we are trying to draw, we are trying to plot a graph that's going to tell us who is the goat. You have, let's say we want to use numbers to represent who is the goat. Maybe numbers in terms of contributions, right? Statistics. You are bringing in the statistics of football games based on contributions of, for example, Ronaldo and Messi. So you agree with me that at the end of the day, there is numbers attached to each one of them. So for example, if you say goals, Ronaldo has a number of goals, Messi has a number of goals. If you say assists, Ronaldo has a number of assists, Messi has a number of assists. Okay. Now, based on those two things, you see that their names represent categories. The statistics, the numbers now represent the numbers, and we are trying to plot each one of them. We are trying to plot them to the number that they represent. That's why on our chart, we will use one axis to represent their names. We will use another axis, in this case, to represent their numbers. So we'll plot each one of them to their numbers. Okay, so for example, now we can have the first person. We can have Ronaldo here, and we can have Messi here. Okay, now this is my axis representing a category. Now I need to plot the numbers now for Ronaldo and the number for Messi to the number. So the number axis now is going to be my y-axis, where I'm going to have from 0 to like maybe 2,000 in terms of contribution. Okay, now when I now finally plot, now if Ronaldo has a specific number, I'm going to make sure that because I'm doing a column chart, I'm going to draw a column that is going to plot up to the level of that particular number on the y-axis. Okay, and like I said, I'm going to close my eyes to do this. Okay, so I close my eyes to do that, so there is nothing biased about it. So now we know who exactly is the goat. Okay? So that's how you plot a chart. You just realize that there will always be a category and there will always be a number for the charts that you are trying to plot. Okay? This is extremely important when we get into Power BI so that you will know exactly where to place, things in your visualization. All right? Now, technically speaking, let me see. What are you guys saying? I closed my eyes. It wasn't biased. I did close my eyes. That was not biased. Okay. Now, technically speaking, a good data visualization or a good, let's call it a good data visualization, whatever. The person that's creating the visuals now, I don't know how to put that. Now, someone that's creating a visuals basically will have to be good with two things. The first one is you must know how to select the right charts. And the second one is you must know how to use your visualization tool effectively. Okay. Right now, our first objective is how to use the visualization tool effectively for creating visuals. The only way you can use your visualization tool effectively to create a visual is to understand all the controls that you have on the tool. Okay. And that's why I basically started from the axis. So if I go into Power BI now, I'm going to bring in quick data sets for Superstore. I'm sure many of you should know Superstore data sets. So we're using the one from your folder. Let's go to annual sales data. And let's just bring for 2017, just one. Okay, so I'm connected to that data and I will just go straight to load. So there are always different ways, or let's say different methods or different techniques for creating your charts. You will have the one you prefer, and sometimes the one you prefer is always based on the one you learned first. So I have my own preferred method. And my preferred method is, first, you see that on my fields pane now, I can see the table I loaded. And if I expand this, I will see the list of the columns that we'll have in that data set. Then, like we established earlier, your data that you want to plot will come from fields. The chart type that you want to use will come from visualizations. If you want to filter your charts, you do that from your filter pane. But then your canvas is your plain sheet of paper. That's where you get to work. That's where you put all your chart. Okay. Now, to create a visual, the very first thing by my preferred method is you need to have an idea about the type of chart that you want to use first, which is based on a couple of concepts that we haven't discussed yet. Okay. But the fundamental is whatever chart type you are trying to create, eventually, as long as you are using a chart, know that you need to identify what's your categorical element and what's your numerical element based on what we just established right now. And for people who probably are new to data visualization, this is a guide for you to know that if somebody gives you data sets and says, analyze this, create a report for me, create a chart for me, the simple way to do that is look at your data, identify the numbers that you have in the data, identify the numerical columns that you have. Okay, so if you look at Superstore data now, these are my numerical columns: sales, quantity, discounts, and profit. Because I want to visualize, I know I always need two things, isn't it? I need numerical and I need categorical. Once you look at your data, every numerical field you have in your data is a source for visualization. And you can always find a relationship by every other thing, because if these are my numerical columns, that means every other column in these data sets are categorical. They are only categorizing and they are only describing these columns. So if I want to do a chart now, I don't have a template, I have nothing. Somebody just says, can you visualize it and make some sense from it? What I'm going to do is identify numerical columns, okay? Then I can now start to think about how I would like to, display them graphically. So for example, now, if I have sales, I can decide to show sales by any of these other categorical columns. Remember that what? You have your axis, X and Y. One has to stand for numerical, one has to stand for categorical. Now I know what my numerical columns are. I can basically display any of these things against any other categorical column we have in the data set. Okay, but then it's a long story in terms of how you decide what you want to tell, how you decide what will make sense. Okay, now sometimes I need to put it out there. There are times when your data will not have numerical columns. It won't have it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't visualize, because at the end of the day, there is always a hidden component of numerics in your data, and that hidden component is counts. So, for example, if you give me HR data sets that includes just the name of employees, maybe their positions, maybe their departments, let's even say those three things: name of employees, position, department, maybe employment date, and retirement date. You see that there is nothing that is numeric about that data set, right? But then you can always do a count. So I can count. So how many employees did we have for the following years? How many employees were retired in the following years? What's the trend of hiring in the following years? All those things, you are simply going to get them by counting, right? So for every data set, you have two sets of numericals. One set is numeric columns. The other set is a count of anything within the data. All right, so you can always visualize based on those two things. Okay, so now to create your visual in Power BI, the first thing I would recommend you do is, in your mind, know the type of charts you want to use first. Okay, so we're obviously going to go with the very first chart that is there. So I'm going to say that I will just click on this first chart, and you see immediately you see the placeholder on our canvas. From here, you may leave it like this. You may expand it that way just to have the right size that you have in mind for the particular chart. Okay. Now the next thing is, obviously the chart will have axes. You will later discover that not all charts have axes. Okay, you will later discover that. Can somebody just send to the chart now, which chart type do you think does not have axis? All the ones I've shown you so far, they all have axis. They all have X axis and Y axis. Somebody should tell me which one doesn't have axis while I continue with this. All right, so good answers, pie charts, obviously. So pie chart doesn't have axis. And you may be wondering, so if pie chart doesn't have axis, so how do we show what is numeric and what is categorical? I'll show you that before we conclude this class. Okay, so now this is my bar chart right now, and I've identified my numerical columns. I do have sales, is the easiest target for now. I will be using sales against every other categorical column or any other categorical column. So right now, for example, I can say that, okay, I would like to see sales performance for maybe my product categories. So what I'll do is I will simply come to my data and I will look for sales, and I'm going to tick sales like that. Then this is just one. I'm going to go to where I have category and I'm going to tick category like that as well. And you see that I have my first chart showing my sales by category. Now, based on what I've done now, Power BI has automatically detected where each one of them should go. Before we even discuss where each one should go, this is how you create your charts. First of all, I'll come back to give you the details as per how Power BI detected, or when Power BI doesn't detect, what should you do, right? So Power BI detected and put everything in order right now, which is good and fine. Now, once you create a chart this way, if you click outside of the chart one time, just click out one time like this, You probably won't notice anything, but then it means that you are currently focused on a different thing. But if you have the chart selected like this, that means you are focused on the chart. Now, when you are focused on the chart, everything you do in the visualizations pane is going to affect the chart. When you click on the canvas, everything you do on the visualizations pane is going to affect the canvas. Okay, I'll come to show you some of them shortly. So now, if you have the chart selected, that means I'm focused on the chart. So if you go to your visualizations pane and you pick a different chart like this donut now, what you are doing is you are changing your chart type to a different one. Meanwhile, at the end of the day, you would like to fill up this page with several different charts. So for you to create a different chart from the one you have created before, you need to make sure that you move your focus away from that chart and you put your focus on what? On the canvas. So click anywhere on the canvas to make sure your focus is back to the canvas. Then repeat the process to create a new chart. So now I do have one donut chart. Now I'm going to use maybe a column chart now. So I can pick column chart like that. You see, I do have a placeholder for a column chart now. You can drag this and place anywhere you like, and then you repeat the process. So now we have seen sales by category visualized. I may want to visualize sales by something else. So let's say now I want to see sales by city, for example. So I tick the same process, tick sales, then tick city. Then you see that I have a column chart that shows sales by cities, and we have quite a good number of cities that can fit in to a single view for this chart. So if you look at this chart now, you see that I need to scroll to see everything. Okay, now one of the things you want to do as an analyst is to know that you always don't want to show too much. There is more when you show less. So typically, nobody's going to be interested in seeing the sales of all the cities in a single chart like this. There will most likely be a need to see maybe only a few number of cities. That's where your filter pane comes in. That's when you want to reduce what you are seeing on your chart. And that's where filter pane comes in. Now, tell me, I want to reduce the number of cities that I'm seeing on this chart now. This chart currently has two things. It has cities and it has sales. That's two things from my data, sales and cities. Now, if I want to reduce the number of cities that I have, what should I filter? Should I filter on the city or should I filter on the sales? Someone please tell me, what should I filter? Filter on the city or filter on the sales? I promise you, you are going to be wrong. I promise you, you are going to be wrong. I promise you. Some people say sales, some people say city. Okay? Who is confident? I've already promised you that you'll be wrong. So, who is confident? I want to reduce the number of cities. Sales, so that you could have a particular number for maybe the highest city by sales. Okay, so the reason why you are all wrong is because it depends on what I want to use as my criteria for reduction. It depends. I want to reduce the number of cities. I've not told you, what's my criteria for the reduction. So for example, if my criteria for reduction is strictly based on cities, then I can use city as what I want to use for my filter. But my criteria for reduction is based on the number of sales, right? Then I can basically use sales as my, my filter field, okay? Now in this case, I'll just show you what you have available in both of them. So if you go to city, for example, and you click on the drop down on city, you see that because city is a column that has categories, things in text. you will have different types of available filtering options. In this case, the first option we have is basic filtering, where I can decide to, tick the ones I want and untick the ones I don't want. So for example, I can untick everything and just pick a couple of cities like that. Okay, that means these are the cities I want to show. That's when you use basic filtering. You have a different filtering option, which is advanced filtering. Advanced filtering is going to apply some logics to your filtering. Now, these logics are, I'll call them text logics. So for example, I want to filter and I want to show only items that maybe contain maybe letter B, for example. Then I have to click apply filter, and you will see that the only ones I'm going to have left are the ones that contain letter B, the cities that have letter B in their descriptions. Or maybe it could be maybe the one that do not contain. It could be the one that starts with. So let's say you want to see cities that start with maybe letter C. You click apply filter, and it will only show you cities that start with letter C, right? Okay. Then the other type of filtering that is available for a text column is top-end filters. So the top-end filters will only show the top cities, but then it's going to ask for a criteria, because how do you know what the top cities are? It is based on their sales numbers as well. So if you use the top-end, you can say that you want to see the top 10, for example, the top 10 cities. Then you have an extra bucket here that is asking you top 10 cities by which value. Then you can drag sales into that box. Okay, I can remove it. I'll just drag sales again and put into this box of by value. And when I click apply filter, I'm going to have only the top 10 cities by sales. Okay, now it's possible, for example, that this might leave a little bit of confusion after now, but that's 100% deliberate, so that at least you will think about it. You think about it. So I can remove sales now, for example, and I will say by profit instead. Then I'll click apply filter. Now I want somebody to try to describe what's this chart showing right now. Can you describe what this chart is now? What is this chart now? Can you describe this chart? See, I'm doing sales by city, but I filtered it to only show top 10 by profits. So what does it mean? So top 10 cities with the highest profits, 5/10. Top 10 cities by profits, 5/10. Profitability analysis of cities, 5/10. Profit on sales, 5/10. Who is going to give me 10/10? Okay, let me also make an attempt to see. Top 10 cities by sales and profit. No. Top 10 profits by city. Where is the sales? Where is the sales? Because right now, what you are looking at now, I'm looking at the sales of the top 10 most profitable cities. I'm looking at the sales of the top 10 most profitable cities. That's what I'm looking at right now. Okay, so the reason why I'm showing you this is because what you have in the by value is something you can control. It doesn't exactly have to be what you are visualizing by. So like in this case now, I'm visualizing sales by city, but this sales by city now is based on my top 10 most profitable cities. All right, now let's see if there's something here. Let's try something very quickly. I'm going to create another one. So let's do another sales by city. I would like to change this to a bar chart instead. It's easier to read this way. So I'll create another bar chart. And I'm going to look at the same thing, and we're going to see if there's a difference between the two. So city and sales, right? Then I go to my filters pane and I go to city. I change my filtering type to top N, and I want the top 10. Now I want the top 10 by the same sales. So apply filter. Now let's see, is there any difference on the lists? Let's remove this one. Now tell me, is there any difference on the two lists? Or do you have challenges looking at what you are saying? Yes, obviously you have challenges looking at what you're seeing. Okay, I will come to address those challenges shortly. All right, so let me show you quickly. This one, the first chart is the top 10 sales by city, right? If I click on this box, I will focus on it. Look at the number 5 or number 4 city that has the highest sale. Can you see number 4 city is what? Philadelphia, isn't it? That's number 4 city. Top 10 cities, top 10 city by sales. Philadelphia is number 4. Now on the second chart, top 10 most profitable cities by sales. Where is Philadelphia? Where? Nowhere to be found. So you can see that there are two different things, basically, and the two analyses are completely different, and you need to be able to describe exactly what your analysis is about. Okay, now let's address some issues that we have right now. The first chart shows sales by city. The second chart shows sales by city. Meanwhile, also, you will also notice that right now, it is difficult for you to read what you are seeing. That's where formatting of charts comes in. Okay, because like I said earlier, the visualization pane is where you design your chart, because your chart will always come with some defaults. Now you see the default is sales by city because that's what I'm looking at. This one is also sales by city because that's also what I'm looking at. But I have my option to design these charts, these two charts, in different fonts. So the way you design charts in Power BI is, first, you need to have the particular chart you want to design. You need to have it selected. Then come to your visualizations pane. On your visualizations pane, you have 3 different segments there. The first one is the one that controls the data on your chart. This is the data in my chart. The second one is the one that controls the design of the chart. And that's the one that shows format of visual. So that I click on format your visual now, you see that I can control my y-axis, I can control my x-axis, and I can do so many other things as well. The first thing I want to do, for example, is to rename the title. This one is top 10 cities by sales. So I need to go to my format. I need to go and look for where I can see title. Now, if you check on each of these buckets, it's something you need to basically play around it so that you know where every single thing is. You will see that you can't find anything titled here. But when you go to general, the other tab, you will see title right there. So if I expand title, you see the text box right here is where I can change it and call this top 10 cities by sales, right? And then I need to make a change to the second one as well. But when we get there, we'll make that change. Okay. Now, since I'm currently on title now, you see there are other options. I can change the font type, something. I can change the font size, and there's so many controls that you can actually work with in terms of formatting. Now, one thing you must also have in mind is this. With this Power BI formatting pane, or with this Power BI visualization pane, when you want to format your charts, you have 2 types of things that you basically want to format, 2 types of things, right? It's either you're formatting a data point or something. Let's just call it data points now. I don't know, maybe data point is not the right word to use. Okay, so in your chart, right? in your charts. Some things in your charts are direct translation of your data. So for example, if you do a bar chart like this, you see that the bars basically represent some numbers from my data. This x-axis that has Mr. A and Mr. B, they are things that represent my data, isn't it? But then the title that I'm going to write here is not something that comes from my data. The title is something that I will have to describe myself. Okay, so if you go to look at the formatting pane in Power BI, that's why you have these two things, the visual and the general. So the visual always has the formatting options for things that are coming directly from your charts, while the general will always have things that are just, you know, for example, the title that will just change now is not something that is exactly from our data. If you go to effects, you will see that on the effects, you can change background color, for example, of the charts to maybe black, for example, right? Which is terrible, right? So you see that that color of black for the chart is not something that is coming from our data. If you go still under effects, you will see something about visual border. So just put a border around the charts. It's currently off now, isn't it? Say it's off. Now, if I put that visual border on, under general, go to effects, put on visual border, you see that you have borders around the chart. Now, that border is not something that is coming from the data. So that's one way to quickly know exactly this formatting option I'm trying to implement. Where will I find it? Once you click on format of visual, ask, is this something that is related exactly to the data? I'll find it under visual. Or is it something that is not related exactly to the data? You find it under general. So titles you always find under general. Okay. Now the other thing we want to make change to is the font size of these our y-axis. So if I come to y-axis like this now, I can increase the font size to something that is more readable, and I'm going to try to repeat the same thing with the second chart. Now, the only difference is this. Once I make some certain changes on the first chart, and I would like to apply exactly the same thing to the second one, I don't necessarily have to go to the second chart and start all over again. What I can do is select the first chart, click on Format Painter right here, and then it will give me a brush like this that I'm going to use to touch this second one. Once I use it to touch the second one, the exact format from the first one is going to apply to the second one. Of course, the title is something I need to write out. So I need to come back here to Format, then go to General, go to Title, and I will title this correctly as top, what is this now? This is top 10 most profitable cities IES. So this is one of the places that is going to teach you patience, because if you type too fast, it's going to miss some of the things you are typing for some reason. That should be a glitch that should be resolved sometime. By sales, you see, LES. Okay, so this is top 10 cities by sales. This is top 10 most profitable cities by sales. Now, assuming I'm trying to tell a story right now, and I'm trying to show that this Philadelphia appears here and it doesn't appear here. I just want to highlight it. I want to put it out there. What I can do is maybe color the bar for Philadelphia with a different color. All right. So what do I need to do? I still need to format the chart. So I'll come to Format again. Then let's go to look for the bars. So if I go to the bars like this, you see the first thing is on the colors, and this way you get to change the colors of the bars. So I can change the color of everything to a different color, for example, like that. But then let's revert back to the default. Okay, now since I'm trying to change just Philadelphia alone, what I'll do is I'll put on the option that says show all. Then it's going to show me all. Then I can go to the one I'm interested in, and I can basically give that single one a different color, like that. Okay. All right. If you have questions so far, just type it. Type your question. All right, so far, so good. In terms of formatting, trust me, there are like 1 million formatting options. You need to go select the charts, go to format, and check them out one by one so that you will understand, what each of the options do. Play with all the options one by one. But the simple guide I've given you is, the options that have to do with the data itself, you find them in visual. The one that will have to do with something that is not related to the data you find on general. Okay, now let's go back to our field section. Now we've left format now, and we're back to fields. And let's discuss how was Power BI able to detect the right place to place our fields when we just ticked. Because another way to create your visuals, instead of just ticking, is to drag, right? So for example, I can create a new chart now. Say that I want to do a donut chart that is going to show my sales by category once again. Instead of ticking, I can drag category and put somewhere here. Now, what does that mean? We don't know yet until I explain. And I can drag sales and put somewhere in values. Then I'll have the chart. Now, instead of tick now, I've done drag and drag. And guess what? I can still select this one, Format Painter, and paint this one. And you see that it will still apply the formatting to these charts as well. Okay, so now let's discuss something that we'll call the field buckets, as probably the last thing we'll discuss in the class today. The field bucket is in Power BI as a visualization tool. Your charts that you create have different sections. They have different segments. Okay? Somebody says, how do you know the city that made it to the top 10 by profit? Since Philadelphia didn't make it to the top 10 by profits. Maybe I'll come to read the question again once I'm done with the next section. Okay? So now we're talking about field buckets. So for every chart now, we've already identified 2 field buckets earlier, right? In our description, we identified x-axis and y-axis. Okay, now in the place of every chart, there are different rows for different chart types. Okay, now we're going to zoom back now into Power BI and leave, native charts now. So in Power BI, instead of X and Y axis now, you have different something that we call field buckets. So there are buckets now, right? Ordinarily, we should say the number 1 field bucket is X axis. Number 2 field bucket is y-axis. But then because it's a tool now that tries to maximize how you use charting generally as a computerized program now. Okay, so they have different bucket lists for different things. The first bucket list is axis, and what the axis is used for is to display your categorical data, right? So the one that is categorical data will always be in your axis. Then you have your values as well, and this will always display your numerical data. Now think about it now, isn't it? Think about this. We said x-axis, y-axis. One will display category, another one will display numerical. Now, if you think about different chart types, if this is a bar chart, This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. Here, the x-axis will have your numbers 0 to 100, while the y-axis will have your description, Mr. A and Mr. B. But if you do a column chart, the opposite is the case. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. This time around, your y-axis doesn't have the categories. It has the numbers 0 to 100, Mr. A and Mr. B. You see that this thing has been flipped. So the way Power BI manages this is, instead of saying x-axis, y-axis, which can be different for different chart types, what we just have is axis and values. Okay? In this case now, in the first column chart, this column chart, the y-axis is showing the number. The x-axis is showing the category. On the second chart, the x-axis is showing the number. The y-axis is showing the category. You see that it has been flipped, right? So the sensible way to manage it is, whatever your category is, for whatever chart type you are using, category will always be on axis, number will always be on value, all right? So those are the first two field buckets. Now, another field bucket that you have, if I go to number 3, so if you go back to this chart now, let's use this one as an example, all right? So this is the first chart, and we are using what type of chart? We are using stacked bar chart. I'm going to describe what these things mean in those my recordings that I will drop for you. So you see the axis right there, you see the values right here. Now, if I don't only want to see, I'm not only interested in looking at the sales in New York City, for example. Let's assume that inside New York City or inside each of these cities, I want to see the proportion of sales that we have for each product category. This is total sales for New York. I want to see that. Okay, so for telephones, for example, you have maybe 200,000, and then for maybe furniture, we have 40,000, something like that. That means I still want to break this down by something else. That's where I get to use my legend. Okay, now because I don't want to see the full numbers per state, I want to break those full numbers down inside each city by a different field. That field I'm going to use as my breaking down element will have to go into my legend. So I can drag category now, for example, and put that on legend. And you see that instead of the full bars, I'm going to have it broken down into furniture, office supplies, and technology based on this chart I'm using. If I were using a column, if I were using a clustered bar chart instead of stacked, this is the clustered, right? Before breaking down, you have just one bar for each city. New York appears just one. Now I want to break New York down by the different product categories that we have. Drag category, put on legend, is going to break it down. Now New York will now have 3 things. New York for furniture, New York for office supplies, New York for technology. So your other field is your legend, which you use to do what? To break down. Let's just call it breakdown for now. Okay, got 3 minutes more. So that's legend. Now, if you scroll down, you will see that we have another field bucket that is called small multiples. I think I should probably use a different example for this. So let's go to a new page and let's create, let's do a bar chart. Nope. Let's do a column chart that shows sales by category. Okay. Now, this sales by category that you are seeing in this column chart right now is for our entire data sets. Now, these are our entire data sets. Assuming we have 4 regions, we have 4 different regions. Okay. Now, if I want to see these sales by category now, at separate charts for each of my 4 regions, I'll tell you the two options that I have. Option one is that for this first one, like this, I will go to my filters pane. I will say, okay, I don't want this to be for the entire data set. I want this to only be for maybe East, right? Alone. So I will go to my data. I will drag region and put inside, add region to one of the fields that we have in the filters so that I can pick East, right? So now this chart now is saved by category for East. Let me do Control-C and Control-V, copy and paste, drag this one out. Then go to region and say, okay, this one is not for East, this one is for South, okay? Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste. Let's say this one, okay, it's not for South, this one is for West. Control-C, Control-V, Control-C, Control-V, and let's say this one is not for West, this one is for Central, okay? Now you see, I have the same chart now, but representing what? The 4 different regions that we have. Now, sometimes this is not exactly what you want to do. You want to show the same visualization for different things. It's like you want to multiply, because what I've done now is I've multiplied this chart how many times? 4 times for different regions. So one way to also do this is I'm going to delete all of them, right? I will leave only the first one, and I'm going to remove this filter from region. I can make this like this now, one big chart. What I will now do is I will just take region from here and I will put it under small multiples like that. So it's going to multiply the chart for me into Central, East, South, and West. So your next field bucket is what? Is a small multiples, which you used to do what? To replicate your visual for multiple categories. You can call it like that, right? So just ignore my handwriting. Okay, so let's quickly cover this field bucket so we can round up. So the next one we have for field buckets is tooltips. So when you hover on a chart like this, it shows you something, right? It shows you what you are visualizing. I'm visualizing category by sales. So if I hover, it will show me the category and the number of sales for that category. The category and number of sales for that category. So if you want extra information to display or to be displayed on the tooltip, so this is the tooltip, then what you do is you add that to this. So for example, I also want to see the profit when I hover. So I'll go to my data, I will drag profits, and I'm going to put it on tooltips like that. So if you check, you see that profit also shows. Now, this is more standard for many of the visuals, since most of our visuals, so let's go to number 5. Number 5 is what? Number 5 is tool tips. I would say this is more info. Okay, now most of your charts will have this, like I showed you at the beginning, but some of your charts will not have that. Some of your charts are rounded. They don't have axes, just circular. Pie chart, donut chart, like this. Okay, so if you check on a donut chart, so let's remove all of this, remove this, and just do a donut chart. So if you check on a donut chart, what you are going to see is that you don't have axis, obviously. It's round. It's round. What you have is legends and values and details. Okay, so you have just one single round that you want to share some categories inside. You already know that we use legend for breaking down. So that's why if you do category, automatically it goes into legend. And you do sales, it goes into values. Numbers always go into values, right? So for your rounded charts, your legend still remains for breaking down. Your value still remains for what? For your numbers, right? Now, because a rounded chart naturally is meant to be split, you won't have to split it to show the proportion of each category for that single round, so that you know the percentage share kind of thing, right? That's why you use legend. But then if you still want to break it down further, so for example now, 37% is for technology, Now, I still want to break that further down by region, for example. Then I can pick region and put on details. So for your rounded charts now, legacy remains for breaking down, but details now is maybe you call it further break in rounded charts. Okay, now forget the fact that I've used rounded charts. By rounded charts, I mean donut charts and pie charts, which both have, or let's say the pie chart basically has a square version. There's a square version of pie charts. Instead of round, it is now square. And that is what? That is tree map. So it is basically the same thing. This one is just rounded. So they will all have the same thing, right? This one calls it group and details. So the group for that one will always carry your category. So if you do number 7, you can call it group, and this is category for what? Tree map. Okay. Now, knowing all of this is going to help you to effectively, at least from the tools point of view, visualize your data. We've gone 5 minutes over time. And at this point, I would say if you have questions, you can ask. The first question I see in chat says that difference between reports and dashboards and when they are to be used. I think we'll cover that in like the first class and the first opening of this series. Actually, we talk about difference between reports and dashboards. Reports, just as a summary, are always details. You have detailed information in reports. On a dashboard, you only have summarized information. So you can expect a report to have several pages. A dashboard will only have 1 page, as an example. Question, how do you know the city that made it to the top 10? The person says, I mean, the city that is not in the top 10 by sales, but is in the top 10 by, is it advised to make bar color difference so that, yes, that's one way, right? So if you're coming from storytelling perspective, then you want to highlight the things that you are trying to display, like, okay, so which city is it that is not here, and which one is it that is not here as well. Okay, there can also be a formularized way of doing those things to make it easy and dynamic. So it's going to be like a formula that is going to drive it. Can we have the lessons breakdown? I don't have a full picture of what that question is. The lessons breakdown, can you describe what you mean by that? Any other question before we call it a day? Okay, for each class, yes, DSN says they will send each class videos to you shortly. Any other question? All right, please, can you please type what's your key takeaway? Can you type what's your key takeaway from today's class? Key takeaway from today's class. The field buckets, yeah, extremely important. You need to understand them. Okay, so for many people, it's the field buckets. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So it's almost like before you start visualizing it, understand those things and don't just use them randomly. Know what their use is for so that you can visualize effectively, right? So it looks like for almost everybody is a field bucket. All right. So thank you, everyone. I don't know if you have Fumini available to round.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that session. Absolutely amazing. So I'll be sharing right now with everyone the link to the dashboard challenge, which is already public, that everyone will be participating in following this class. So I just dropped it on the chat now. I'm sure that it has been shared on the Google Classroom as well, and we'll continue to follow up to share that as well. So you can begin to go through that and begin to engage, use all your learning so far as our mentor really guided us, and all your buckets and everything to make sure that you can begin to get some insight and just get started on the challenge. So you might want to maybe use this week to read through and all, and because the challenge will be the hands-on sessions on the challenge will be starting from next week, I believe. So please, let's all get started. Let's get excited. It's really going to be amazing. So I want to say thank you once again to Ahmed Oyelowo for this amazing session. It was truly informative, and we'll be sharing the recording with everyone. So can we just celebrate our mentor again on the chat? Just drop our fire emojis, our everything, all our claps. Thank you so much for this session. It truly has been amazing. Thank you so much. So cheers, everyone. And we'll see you on Google Classroom and next week for our next class session.
All right. Bye.